All right, so write down your math goal in your math notebook. Our math goal is divide unit fractions by whole numbers. Write down what you know about dividing fractions and then come back to me. Okay, so here's our first question. I have half of a candy bar and I want to share it equally with two of my friends. How much are we each going to get? So remember, I only have half of a candy bar, not the whole thing, only half of it. So think about it. How are we going to solve that and what answer are we going to get? So think about it and then come back to me. Okay, so this is what it looks like. I drew a whole candy bar, right? I split it in half because I have half of a candy bar. And I want to share equally with two friends, so including myself. So there's three of us that are sharing this candy bar, right? So that means I need to split up the half into three parts. One part, two parts, three parts. But I must divide the other half, even though I don't have it, but I have to divide the other half so I know how many equal parts a whole would make. Okay, so I divided the part that I don't have also. And notice I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 equal parts, right? So I know that I'm going to have 6 equal parts. And I know that I'm getting one part of this. So I'm getting one little part here. So one little part makes it 1/6. So I know that 1/2 divided by 3 is 1/6, okay? And I know that 1/2 goes in the front because that's what I have. It says I have half of a candy bar. That's all I have. So my total amount always goes in front, right? That is my dividend, right? My divisor is what I'm dividing by. What am I dividing by? I'm sharing it with 2 plus myself, which makes it 3, okay? So let's look at this a little bit further. Okay, so let's look at the math behind this. All right, so I know that I have 1/2, so there's my 1/2. I'm going to divide it by 3, okay? Divided by 3. Now, in order to get the 1 here, remember, when we have a whole number, how can I make it into a fraction? I just put a 1 underneath, right? Makes it 3/1. So this is what my equation looks like, right? I have 1/2 divided by 3 wholes. Now I need to find a common denominator just like we did before when we were in our last couple of videos, right? All right, so my common denominator. I know I need to make it into a 2. So my 1/2 is going to stay the same. So I got to change this 1 to a 2. So what do I got to do? I got to multiply by 2. If I multiply the bottom by 2, what do I got to do to the top? Multiply it by 2, right? So I'm going to multiply the top by 2. 3 times 2 is 6. 1 times 2 is 2. 6/2. 6 divided by 2 is 3, right? Still 3. I'm just changing it to find the common denominator. It's an equivalent fraction, right? Okay, so now I just simply divide. 2 divided by 2 is 1. But oh, look, I have 1 divided by 6. What does that look like? Well, it looks like a fraction, right? I can write it like a fraction. 1 divided by 6. I can write it that way. But now, this looks a little bit different. I have a fraction divided by a whole. So I have 1/6 divided by 1. But don't let that fool you because think about it. What do you know about dividing by 1? So think about it. If you, let's say you have 3 and you divide it by 1, what's your answer going to be? 3. Let's say you have 5. You divide it by 1. What's your answer going to be? 5. So dividing by 1 always gives you the result of the other number, right? So if I'm dividing 1/6 by 1, what's going to be my answer? 1/6. And that's what I found in my picture, right? I'm getting this little part here. I'm getting a 6. My friend is getting a 6. My other friend is getting a 6. And if I were to add these up, right, what am I going to get? 3, 6, right? Which is the same thing as 1/2, right? I'm just dividing it up. So notice my answer got smaller, right? Why did it get smaller? Because I'm dividing, I only have a half, and I'm dividing it up even further, so my pieces are getting smaller, right? My piece gets smaller. All right, let's look at to see if keep switch will work on this. Okay, so let's see, does keep switch work? So what do I have? I have a half, so I'm keeping my half. I'm switching my sign and I'm flipping the 3, finding the reciprocal, right? Becomes 1/3. 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 3 is 6. Does it work? Yeah. So easy peasy, right? Keep, switch, flip. 1/6. Am I getting 1/6? Yep. Another way to think about it is think multiplication, right? Dividing by 3 is like multiplying by 1/3 because you're getting 1/3 of it, right? You're getting a third of it. So it's the opposite operation, right? Because they're inverses. So it's the same thing as 1/2 times 1/3, which is 1/6. Just another way to think about it and look at it. Okay, let's look at another example. We have 1/5 of a pizza. So here's my pizza, and I divided it up into 5 equal pieces. I know it's a rectangular pizza, right? It looks kind of funny, but it's just to model it. I have 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5, 5/5. So we have a fifth. That's what we have. Okay. We want to divide it equally into 2 parts. What fraction is each of the parts? So here is my 1/5 that I have, and I'm dividing it in half. So if I divide this one in half, I got to divide all the other ones in half because I want to see what's the total amount that I would have if I had a whole. Okay, that's the only way it works. So I'm dividing up all these other ones in half. I divided those in half also. So now I'm taking half of it. So what am I getting? I'm getting a half of a fifth, right? So I have a fifth and I'm taking half of it. I'm taking half of something, right? So you can think of it as the 2, right? Becomes, you can think of it as multiplication when we do the keep, switch, flip, right? We have a fifth. I keep that, I switch the sign, and I can multiply by 1/2 because 2, if you think about the inverse of 2, it's 1/2. So it's the same as saying that I'm taking a half of it, right? Because I'm splitting it in 2, I'm taking half of it. So another way to think about it. So does it work? Let's see. 1 times 1 is 1. 5 times 2 is 10. I get 1/10. Did I get 1/10 here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yep, I'm getting 1/10. So I just wanted you to see the visual behind it. But keep, switch, flip will always work for any division with fractions, okay? So, whew, right? Mind blowing. So easy, right? Because you can multiply fractions, so you can divide fractions. Keep, switch, flip. Okay, so you try one now. 1/3, and I'm going to divide it into 4. So think of it as having 1/3 of something, and you're dividing it or sharing it with 4 people. So 1/3 of something divided into 4. Draw a picture if you need to, and then do the math equation, then come back to me. All right, so I did both. I drew the picture, right? I have 1/3, so I drew my whole, and I divided it up into thirds. So here are my thirds. And then it said that I want to divide it by 4, right? So I'm dividing it by 4. So I divided each of my thirds into 4 equal pieces. And I'm taking this part of it right there. So how much is that? Well, that would be 1 out of how many equal pieces? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Does that work when we do the math? I have 1/3, keep it, switch the sign, flip, find the reciprocal, makes it 1/4, 1/12. They are the same, right? So remember, you have a third and you're taking 1/4 of it. You're taking a fourth because you're dividing it up into fourths, okay? So let's try some more. Okay, so you're going to practice some more. Write these down in your math notebook. Now notice these are a mixture of everything that we learned. A whole divided by a whole when your whole is a smaller number. A whole divided by a fraction divided by a whole. Keep, switch, flip. Keep, switch, flip, right? Keep, switch, flip. We'll work on all of these. So go ahead and pause the video and do these and then come back to me. All right, so 3 divided by 10, right? I keep the 3, switch the sign, I flip, find the reciprocal, gives me 3/10. 4 divided by 1/3, right? I keep the 4, I switch the sign, I find the reciprocal of 1/3 is 3, 4 times 3 is 12. 1/2 divided by 5, I keep the 1/2, I switch the sign, find the reciprocal of 5 is 1/5. My answer is 1/10. Okay, 5 divided by 8. Keep the 5, switch the sign, find the reciprocal of 8 is 1/8. 5 times 1 is 5. 1 times 8 is 8. 5/8. Okay, 7 divided by 1/2. I keep the 7, I switch the sign, find the reciprocal. 7 times 2 is 14. 1/3 divided by 4. I keep the 1/3. I switch the sign. I flip. And that's going to give me 1/12. Okay. So what I want you to notice too, right? When I have a smaller number divided by a bigger number, it gets smaller, right? Because I have 3 things and I'm dividing it into 10, right? If I only have 3 and I'm dividing it into 10, it has to get smaller, right? Because there's only 3 and I'm sharing with 10, so it's got to get smaller. So it gives me 3/10. Each person will get what? 3/10 of it. Okay. Now, a whole divided by a fraction, right? I have 4 things. I'm splitting up each of the 4 things into thirds. So this one's into thirds, this one's into thirds, this one's into thirds, this one's into thirds. So I'm getting a bigger number because I'm getting more smaller pieces, right? I'm not getting more, it's not larger. I'm just getting smaller pieces, right? I'm getting 12 1/3. Okay. When I have a half, when I have a fraction in the front divided by a whole, which like my 1/2 divided by 5, it's gonna get smaller because I only have a half. I only have part of something and I'm splitting it up even more. So it's gonna get smaller. Okay. All right. So what did you learn today? Write it down in your math notebook. Do a proof of learning by solving a problem. And really the focus of our lesson today was to divide a unit fraction by a whole number. So do a problem like that where your divisor is a whole number, your dividend is a fraction, right? A unit fraction. So your unit fraction should be first, then divided by your divisor, which is a whole number, and then get your quotient, which is your answer, and then write a reflection or a question you may have.